Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The old alien had to give his daughter to a human man because he lost her in a game of chance. Karath's third eye twitched. It always did when he was bluffing, which was precisely why he wore the ceremonial hood so low over his forehead during the final round. He stared at the translucent cards in his hand, which shimmered slightly with heat-reactive ink. Across the crystalline table sat 3 other players, each more insufferable than the last. The Virexian High Clerk with his smug tusks, the Komari twins, who communicated solely through synchronized sneezing, and the human, Colt Mercer, with his eternally amused smirk and that crumpled snack wrapper he kept twirling like it was a royal scepter. "A play or nap, Old Blue?" Colt asked, leaning back in his anti-grav chair, which squeaked in protest. Karath exhaled, ancient lungs wheezing slightly. "Do not mistake caution for lethargy, human. I have seen galaxies rise and collapse before your species learned how to aim a toothbrush." Grinned. "Yeah, well, you're about to see your luck do the same." His final chip forward. It wasn't a chip in the literal sense, more a coded wager key encoded with nanoglyphs. But the principle remained, all or nothing. Cards hit the table. The room fell into silence, a long, stunned silence broken only by the faint whine of the ceiling vent and the unmistakable sound of someone chewing. Colt blinked. That's a win. That's a full solar flush?" Karath remained perfectly still. The Komari twins both sneezed at once. The High Clerk dropped his mug of frothy Crete, and Colt slowly leaned forward, one brow raised. "So what exactly did I win?" Karath's voice was a gravel pit of regret. "My daughter." Colt's snack wrapper dropped to the table. "Sorry, come again?" The first time Lyssa heard about the arrangement, she broke 3 decorative daggers and sent the family's translator droid into an existential crisis. Karath sat on a meditation platform surrounded by calming incense and 7 terrified assistants. Lyssa paced like a caged plasma panther, her long ears twitching so violently that one of the assistants fainted. "You what?" she growled. Karath, who had faced cosmic horrors and interstellar tribunals without flinching, visibly winced. It was the old binding. The wager was legitimate, and the human is a slobbering primate who wears socks with sandals. Lyssa snapped. "You gambled away your only daughter for a game of cards?" "It was Gentel," he muttered. She hurled a fruit bowl across the chamber. Colt didn't consider himself unlucky, just regularly cursed. He'd crash-landed on 17 moons, been mistaken for royalty twice, both times disappointing, and once been abducted by a cult that believed he was the reincarnation of a dancing fungus. So, being handed an alien woman like a door prize wasn't even in his top 5 weirdest Tuesdays. Still, when he first met Lyssa, she looked at him like she was mentally calculating the distance to his trachea. "Don't even think about talking to me," she said. "Wasn't planning to," Colt replied, sidestepping as she scanned him like she was evaluating a used blender. "Do you own a shower?" "I own several. I just don't use them consecutively." "I will gut you," Colt sighed. "This is gonna be great." Lyssa insisted they travel to his ship separately. She arrived aboard a diplomatic cruiser with engraved hulls and a scent generator that made everything smell like polished steel and righteous fury. Colt, meanwhile, took his rickety freighter, the Dust Bucket, which whined every time it accelerated and had a coffee machine that occasionally screamed in binary. When Lyssa first boarded, she took one look around and muttered, "So this is where dreams come to be murdered." Colt gestured proudly. "Ignore the leak. That's just condensation." "Probably." She wrinkled her nose. "This place has the aesthetic of a collapsed lung." "Thank you. I wasn't complimenting you." They didn't speak much for the first leg of the journey. Lyssa sat cross-legged in the corner of the cockpit, eyes closed in meditation, while Colt hummed tunelessly and occasionally talked to the ship like it was a dog. She tried not to listen. She failed. "You really named your ship the Dust Bucket?" "Yeah, it used to be called Starhawk Phoenix Blade 12. But then I got a divorce." From optimism, she snorted before she could stop herself. A small, treacherous sound. Colt grinned. "That was a laugh. I choked on your incompetence. I'll take it." One day into their journey, Lyssa found the relic. She'd been trying to clean the air filters after diagnosing Colt with what she called olfactory war crimes, when she pried open a rusted panel and discovered a small black case. Inside, a smooth obsidian shard glowing faintly with etched Virexian script. Her blood ran cold. This is from the Temple of Aaron," she whispered. Colt looked up from where he was arguing with the toaster. Oh, that? Found it on a derelict freighter near Zeta 11. Thought it was a fancy coaster. Lyssa nearly threw it at his head. Do you understand what this is? I'm guessing not a coaster. It's an ancestral shard, you illiterate fork monkey. These are meant to stay in the sacred crypts. How did you get this? Colt scratched the back of his neck. Honestly, I just needed something to hold my soup bowl in place during turbulence. She paced in small, furious circles. This shouldn't be off-world. This changes things. Colt watched her with growing interest. You're saying I'm interesting now? No. I'm saying you're a walking galactic felony. Still an upgrade. Later that night, she stood alone in the engine bay, the shard pulsing softly in her palm. The inscriptions weren't just decorative. They moved, shifted, responded to her touch like a living thing. For a moment, she felt something she hadn't since the bet. Curiosity. When Colt walked in, she didn't turn around. I don't get you, she said. Join the club. We meet every Wednesday. You gamble, you smell, you hoard sacred artifacts like leftover noodles. And yet you treat me like a person. Colt leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Radical concept, huh? She turned. Her eyes narrowed, but not entirely with hostility. You belong to me now, he said, half-joking, voice roughened by sleep and space dust. She raised one eyebrow. I will incinerate your socks in your sleep. Colt grinned. Good. They're starting to walk on their own. Lyssa declared mutiny before breakfast. She stood in the middle of the dust bucket's narrow galley, arms crossed, long ears twitching like antennae on high alert. Colt, half awake and wielding a cup of what barely qualified as coffee, blinked at her with the hazy squint of a man unsure whether he was being challenged to a duel or asked to pass the sugar. I am commandeering your ship, she announced. Grimaced. Cool. Just give me 20 minutes to find the steering wheel. You don't have a steering wheel. You understand the problem. Past him and opened a side panel he didn't know existed. I found a backup nav unit buried beneath expired protein bars and what is this? A fossilized banana? That banana was a passenger. Don't speak ill of the dead. I'm redirecting our course to Ferris 9. Blinked again. What's on Ferris 9? Research outpost, and possibly the truth about how a fork monkey like you ended up with a relic sacred to my people. Really getting a lot of mileage out of fork monkey, aren't you? Restraining myself. New coordinates, and the ship lurched violently to the left, throwing Colt into the pantry. Several cans of synthetic gravy rained down on him like judgment from above. Smooth redirect, he muttered from under a shelf of pickled snacks. The journey to Ferris 9 was 3 days of deeply uncomfortable proximity and personal revelations no one asked for. Lyssa meditated. Colt talked to himself. Lyssa tried to disable the intercom system. Colt played a game called Guess That Smell. Lyssa started researching local poisons. Despite everything, she found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. Not with affection, with confusion. Probably wasn't what she expected of a man who had technically won her in a game. He didn't treat her like property, or even a passenger. He treated her like someone who might break his nose if he called her princess again, which in fairness, she had almost done. She found him in the engine bay one evening, elbow deep in the coolant unit, humming a tune she didn't recognize. You hum like a broken wind tunnel, she said. Thanks, Colt said, not turning. Means a lot coming from someone who meditates like she's trying to bend the ship into a pretzel. He leaned against the doorframe watching him. Why didn't you sell the shard? Paused, wiped his hands on a rag that looked suspiciously like an old sock. Didn't feel right? That's not an answer. Only one I've got. Stared at each other for a moment too long. Then Lyssa turned and walked away before he could say something charming and idiotic. Ferris 9 looked like a frozen scream. The outpost jutted from a cliffside of crystalline ice, its spires glowing faintly blue beneath the twin suns. The docking bay was guarded by a rotating orb named Marv, who greeted them with an enthusiastic, "Welcome, honored travelers. Please declare any weapons, pets, curses, or metaphysical baggage." Declared. One grumpy warrior lady with unresolved rage issues beeped. Acknowledged. The outpost was a mess of bureaucratic corridors, flickering lights, and a smell that reminded Colt of burnt licorice and wet robot. Dr. Talvin, a short, jittery scientist with hair like static and glasses that slid off his nose every time he blinked. He took one look at the shard Lyssa carried and dropped his clipboard. "Know what this is?" he squeaked. Lyssa said. "Oh," Colt said at the same time. Nodded at Colt. This is from the Lost Rebellion. Colt raised a brow. You guys really need cooler names for your revolutions. The Lost Rebellion, Talvin repeated, wiping his glasses on his sleeve, was an insurrection led by a group of Virexian dissidents nearly 300 cycles ago. They opposed the old binding, wanted to end the tradition of fate-bound wagers. Lyssa felt the floor tilt beneath her. That's not in the archives. No, it was buried, erased. Your people called it blasphemy. Into a chamber lined with floating data nodes. One glowed red as he approached. This shard, he said, inserting it into a port, is a piece of the sealant core. It was meant to be a key, a truth key, to unlock and broadcast all the secrets the rebellion unearthed. A failsafe in case the movement was crushed. Lyssa stared at the images now flickering across the room. Ancient Virexian writings, diagrams, recordings of robed figures speaking in defiance of the binding. Her ears trembled. My mother, she whispered. She disappeared when I was small. They said she died defending the temple. Talvin nodded, eyes wide. She was one of the rebels. Colt looked between them. So just to clarify, this isn't a coaster. Lyssa didn't punch him, but it was close. They stayed the night at the outpost, which had exactly one guest room, 3 coffee machines, and a therapy lizard named Carl. Lyssa took the bed. Carl took Colt's pillow. As she stared at the ceiling, Lyssa couldn't stop the churn in her chest. Her mother had tried to end the very system her father now claimed to honor. Her father who had gambled her away. What if it wasn't a mistake? What if it had been a message? Beside her, Colt mumbled something in his sleep about dancing marshmallows and dental insurance. She almost smiled. Almost. The next morning, Talvin handed them a data drive. This contains everything we have, but you'll need the other shards to activate the full core. Pieces are there? Lyssa asked. 3, yours is 1. The second, we don't know. But the third, it's in the Citadel, the Virexian Royal Archives. Colt groaned. Let me guess. Heavily guarded, full of bureaucrats, no bathrooms? Correct. I hate being right. As they headed back to the ship, Colt nudged her with his elbow. So this journey started with a card game, a bet, and a really aggressive fruit bowl. Now we're headed to the heart of your ancestral government to steal ancient truth keys. I'm just saying, I've had worse first dates. This is not a date. He winked, yet stared straight ahead. If I kiss you, it will be to distract you before I steal your ship. Colt grinned. Romance? Colt forgot to account for the gravity differential on Cross 12, which explained why he hit the ground like a sack of malfunctioning meat the second he stepped off the ship. Lyssa watched him splat with the passive disinterest of someone observing a bagel deflate. Helpful tip, she said, stepping down gracefully. Try adjusting your stride to compensate for. Don't, Colt groaned from the floor. Just don't. Let me lie here until my bones forgive me. We don't have time for your bones. We're meeting a smuggler who might know where the second shard is, and I refuse to do it alone. And coughed up a mouthful of dust. You say that like I'm not your charming and essential sidekick? I say that like you owe me 3 apologies and a functioning air filter. That filter died nobly. It died full of nacho crumbs. They navigated the cluttered streets of Cross 12's lower district, dodging hawkers selling neural glue, ethically questionable smoothies, and something called plasma socks. A vendor waved a jar at them, shouting, "Pickled thoughts! 10 credits per regret." Colt leaned in. Do you think they have pickled X's? Pulled him away by the sleeve. Focus. The contact's name is Virex. He runs a noodle bar that doubles as a weapons cache. The classic carbon carnage combo. Found the bar tucked between 2 buildings that vibrated with bass from music no one seemed to be playing. Inside, the air was thick with spice, steam, and a suspicious number of eyes. Virex was short, leathery, and very pink. He greeted them with a grin that suggested he regularly blackmailed his own reflection. Must be the lady with the ears and the man with no spatial awareness, he said, gesturing to the stool that Colt was currently missing. Good memory, Lyssa said. You have information. I have noodles. I don't want noodles. No one wants noodles, Virex said, ladling something that looked sentient into a bowl. They come with the territory. Colt took the bowl. If I die from this, tell my toaster I forgave it. Virex leaned in, dropping his voice. You're looking for a shard. Old, dangerous? Lyssa nodded once. Passed through here. Traded hands quickly. The buyer was headed to Drox's station. Where's that? Colt asked through a mouthful of whatever he was currently chewing. Edge of the sector. Lot of exiles, outlaws, and one guy who thinks he's a turtle. I'm starting to like this place. Virex handed them a datapad with coordinates. Word of advice, don't trust anyone, especially if they offer you tea. Colt raised an eyebrow. Why? Because the tea is sentient and very opinionated. Droxus Station was not a station so much as an architectural tantrum in space. Parts of it rotated, other parts didn't. It made docking feel like threading a needle, while the needle argued back. They landed with only minor hull screaming and were immediately greeted by a customs drone that scanned Colt and declared him 99% organic, 1% peanut butter. He saluted. It's the only part of me that knows peace. Lyssa ignored the drone and focused on the map Virex provided. The buyer had registered a temporary housing unit in Sector 7G near something called the Amphibian Arena. Colt lit up. Do you think it involves real amphibians or metaphorical ones? Regarding the shard, I don't care. They walked the twisting corridors of Droxus, passing kiosks where people bartered with emotion chips and a lounge that charged customers based on the depth of their existential crises. In 7G, they found the unit. Door sealed. No response. Tapped the console. Hello, delivery for Glowy McSuspicious? Door hissed open. Inside, no buyer. The place had been torn apart. Furniture overturned. A faint humming in the air. Lyssa stepped forward carefully, scanning with a device. There was a shard here. Someone's moved it? Colt found a fragment of armor embedded in the wall. This looks Virexian. Oil guard issue, she confirmed grimly, which means the Citadel knows. They're collecting them. Why does every clue lead to a heavily armed, ancient fortress filled with people who hate me? Because the universe finds you amusing. Pointed to a console still glowing faintly. Can you pull anything from that? He tried. The screen flickered, then displayed a single message. Lost. It's buried. They stared at it. Colt nodded slowly. So we're back to breaking and entering the Citadel. More like infiltrating, decoding, and not dying. Dibs on decoding. Spell decode without code, which you also can't do. Wounded. Back on the dust bucket, Lyssa paced. Need a plan. The shard in the Citadel won't be accessible. It'll be guarded. Hidden. Yeah, Colt said, digging through a pile of gear. But we've got stealth tech, a semi-intelligent distractobot, and a disarming smile. She eyed him. Your smile makes people lock their doors. Disarming. She sat heavily. I don't know what to believe anymore. My mother, my father, the binding. It's all unraveling. Colt sat beside her, holding something out. A peanut butter packet? Wisdom, but it helps. Took it, smiled faintly. Still don't understand you. I'm a simple man. I pilot a garbage ship, I steal soup bowls, and I accidentally get involved in ancient political uprisings. You forgot the part where you snore like a malfunctioning hovercycle. Grinned. That's just me expressing myself in my sleep. Looked at the glowing shard now embedded in the ship's console. Down, 2 to go. An empire to annoy along the way. Lyssa stood over the table strewn with stolen blueprints, surveillance scans, and one very greasy sandwich Colt refused to throw away. She pointed to a glowing schematic of the Citadel. This corridor here connects the Royal Archives to the upper ceremonial tower. If we can enter from the southeast maintenance port. That sounds like a fancy word for sewer, Colt said, holding up the sandwich like it had a vote. It is the sewer, she replied, but the old records call it the liquid reclamation flow channel, if that helps your dignity. 6 systems ago, she zoomed in on a section of piping. The security grid resets every 72 seconds for maintenance scans. We slip through during that window. Colt nodded slowly. Let me guess. If we miss the window, we're atomized, or locked in a gravity loop until we pass out, or dropped into the lower hall of bureaucratic consequence, which is basically a DMV with lasers. Colt bit into his sandwich. So classic heist. Looked at him. You've done this before? Wiped his mouth. No. But I've watched a lot of bad movies. The plan began with smuggling themselves onto Virex in the cargo hold of a shipment labeled ceremonial robes and mildly aggressive pigeons. The robes were itchy. The pigeons were not mild. They arrived on the planet under cover of dusk, which on Virex looked like the sky had been dipped in neon ink and swirled by a drunken god. The Citadel loomed in the distance, a spire of tradition, secrets, and awful parking. Colt peered through a pair of binoculars shaped like a squid. Place looks cheerful. Does the exterior lighting come in any color other than doom? Lyssa tapped her wrist comm. Activating stealth field, Colt's outline shimmered, then vanished. A second later, he tripped over a rock and reappeared. Field doesn't stop gravity, Lyssa muttered. Then it's false advertising. They reached the southeast port undetected, which was impressive considering the pigeons were still following them, and one kept trying to mate with Colt's boot. The access panel was old, rusted, and full of something that smelled like betrayal. Lyssa pried it open and slid inside first. "This is undignified," she said. Colt climbed in behind her. "Speak for yourself. This is the most exciting Thursday I've had in years." It was narrow, wet, and echoed with every curse Colt whispered after smacking his head on low beams. Lyssa led the way with the grace of someone who'd infiltrated temples before. Colt followed like someone who had only ever infiltrated snack machines. Minutes of sloshing through processed regret, they emerged into a utility bay beneath the archives. Lyssa pulled a scanner from her belt. "The shard's signature is above us. 5th tier. It's in the royal vault." Colt looked at a vent cover on the wall. "Wanna bet that's the only way up?" "Not gamble, right? Family trauma. My bad." Squeezed into the shaft. Colt tried not to complain. Lyssa tried not to kick him in the face. It was a silent agreement that neither of them honored very well. When they reached the 5th tier, the vault door stood before them. Tall, imposing, and humming with energy, Colt approached the control panel. "Let me work my magic." Lyssa gave him a look. "Your last magic trick shut down life support. And yet here we are. Living?" He tapped a few keys. The panel beeped, then hissed, then opened. Lyssa stared. "You actually succeed?" "I'm as surprised as you are." Inside the vault, the shard hovered in a containment field. Black glass pulsing with faint light. Next to it, a terminal blinked, awaiting a command. Lyssa stepped forward slowly, reverently. "This is it. The final piece of the Cellin core." As she reached out, the alarms exploded. Colt jumped. "You touched it!" "Touch it." Doors slammed shut. Red lights strobed. Voice echoed overhead. "Unauthorized access. Lockdown engaged. Disciplinary action. Poetic justice simulation in 3-2. Colt grabbed the shard. "Run." Simulation hit before they reached the door. Suddenly, they stood in a courtroom. Lyssa wore a powdered wig. Colt had a scroll in place of pants. "You have been charged with heresy," boomed a judge with 7 eyes and a gavel shaped like a fish. Colt looked down. "I'm uncomfortable." Lyssa held up the shard. "Override Protocol Echelon K. Daughter of Rathari, line of Cellin." The simulation fizzled. The courtroom dissolved. The door opened. They didn't stop running until they reached the tunnel. Behind them, guards shouted. One slipped on a ceremonial pigeon. Lyssa slid into the chute first, kicking off the wall. Colt dove in after her, just as a plasma bolt scorched the edge of his jacket. Hit the ship ramp at a sprint. Lyssa turned and fired twice. Once at a drone, once at a pigeon that had returned with reinforcements. Colt collapsed into the pilot's chair. "Initiating launch. Please don't barf during acceleration again." That happened once. Painted the ceiling, dust bucket roared into the sky, barely dodging the interceptors. Lyssa stabilized the inertial dampeners mid-roll, while Colt navigated through a storm of magnetic debris. "Weird atmosphere," he whooped. "We're alive. We got the shard. Are you crying?" Wiped her eyes silent. He looked over. "You're shaking." "Remember this shard," she said softly. "My mother, she used to wear it. Around her neck. I thought it was decoration." "Not this time." Over and put a hand on her shoulder. She didn't shrug it off. She said, "The core is complete." "What now? Revolution? Grand speeches? Laser banquets?" "Or to the outer moons. There's a signal beacon left by the rebels. When the core is activated there, the truth will be broadcast to all Virexian systems. Truth bombs, got it." She looked at him. "This might change everything." He smiled. "Then let's blow it all up, princess." She didn't correct him. Not this time. Colt stared at the swirling mass of radiation storms outside the cockpit window and squinted. "So just to be absolutely clear, we're flying straight into that." Lyssa nodded, calmly strapping herself in. "The beacon is inside the storm. Hidden, shielded. Only a complete idiot would build a transmission relay in such an unstable gravitational pocket." "Let me guess," Colt muttered, flipping switches. "Your ancestors were geniuses." "It's a family trait." Trembled as they hit the outer edge of the storm. Warning lights blinked. A small compartment in the wall opened and ejected a puff of dust and what might have once been an apology. Lyssa braced herself. "The core has to be inserted into the signal chamber manually. The chamber is shielded against remote interference." Colt blinked. "Why is everything always manual? Why can't anything ancient and powerful be user-friendly?" "Because Destiny isn't downloadable." The turbulence worsened. The ship's systems complained in binary. Carl the therapy lizard, now semi-domesticated and deeply philosophical, slithered under the nav console and mumbled something about entropy. To the center of the storm and saw it. A floating station, old and dented, rotating slowly. It had no lights, no obvious doors, and absolutely no welcoming mat. Colt docked manually, because autopilot had decided it was on strike. The interior was darker than a politician's soul. Emergency lights flickered like they were trying to communicate in Morse code, but kept getting distracted. Lyssa held the assembled core carefully. It hummed, vibrating softly in her hands. Colt walked beside her, holding a blaster that had jammed 3 times on the way in. So what happens when we plug it in? Transmission begins. The core activates the relay, broadcasting the hidden records of the Sealan Rebellion to every Virexian system. Once it starts, it can't be undone. Great, no pressure. They reached the heart of the station. A single circular platform, cables spiraling from the walls like frozen lightning. A port pulsed with faint blue light. Forward, core in hand. She hesitated. His head. You okay? Back. I'm not sure who I'll be when this is over. You'll still be you. Just the version of you that broke the galaxy's most obnoxious tradition and possibly kicked off a minor civil war. Almost smiled. That's oddly comforting. Good, that's all I've got. She placed the core into the cradle and rumbled. Lights surged. Somewhere above them, long dormant systems powered up and began to transmit. The walls around them lit up with holograms. Images of Lyssa's mother speaking in firm, passionate tones. Evidence of the ancient lies buried by the High Council. Testimonies from those who had vanished, betrayed by a system that favored honor over truth. Lyssa watched in silence. Her shoulders lifted, then slowly dropped, like she'd been carrying something invisible and finally let it go. Colt stood beside her, squinting at one of the projections. Is that a musical number? She sighed. The rebellion believed in dramatic impact. They returned to the ship in silence, both expecting pursuit, interception, something. But the storm stayed quiet. When they reached open space, their comm lit up with messages. Thousands. Floods of data. Colt skimmed a few. Whoa. Your people are arguing with themselves so hard, it's practically a civil symposium. Lyssa scrolled through the transmissions. Some were angry. Others shocked, a few thankful. The binding will fracture, she said. Even if they try to silence it, the truth is out now. Freedom via upload. Our ancestors would be proud. She looked at him. Colt, why did you help me? He leaned back. Well, I'm a sucker for ancient conspiracy. You threatened me multiple times, and I'm pretty sure this counts as a noble act. So I'll get a discount at the Galactic Buffet. Seriously, he sobered, because someone gave you away like a token, and I figured you deserved better than that. She was quiet for a moment. I didn't want to belong to anyone. Smiled, you don't. You chose to be here. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you did. Sat beside him. I'm staying. With me? The ship? That's fair. Carl the lizard crawled onto the console and sneezed. A few days later, they returned to Virex. The Citadel didn't try to arrest them. Not publicly. Not while the world was still reeling from the fallout. Karath met them at the outskirts. Older somehow, shoulders heavy. I saw her, he said. Your mother? In the transmissions. I remembered the way she looked at me when she spoke of change. I didn't understand then. Lyssa nodded. Do you understand now? I understand enough to be ashamed. She didn't offer forgiveness, but she didn't turn away. I didn't lose you in a game, he added quietly. I sent you away because I knew you wouldn't find your truth if I kept you in mine. Lyssa stared at him a long moment. Then softly, you could have just told me. I was your father, he said, not your equal. That was my mistake. When they left, Colt asked, feel any better? She looked at the sky. I feel possible. They spent the next weeks drifting. No mission, no heist, just space, food packets, arguments over music. Carl shedding existential scales. One night, in the middle of nowhere, Colt sat at the console while Lyssa worked on a broken sensor array. The stars stretched like glittering veins across the dark. He glanced over. Hey, when you first came aboard, you threatened to gut me. Yes, you still planning on that? She didn't look up. Only if you try to rename the ship again, but the cosmic noodle has a ring to it. She threw a wrench at his head. They laughed. It echoed through the cabin, warm and ordinary. Lyssa leaned back, resting her eyes. You still think you own me? She asked. Colt smiled. Nah, I think maybe we belong to ourselves now. Just at the same time. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The end.